Hey guys, P. Dahlgren, building Mears Models F86. And this thing is freaking huge. Anyway, guys, this is, I've had a few guys asking about the progress on it, where I'm at. And I want to talk a little bit about what I'm actually doing on this and what this thing's actually set on. And basically, it's a board that I machined and then I actually glued all of this stuff on. As you can see, she's straight as a gunshot. Looks real good. She is leveled. I just moved it so I could get to the back. Now, there's a few things about this jet that I strongly encourage you to put in, because all these panels are temporary. Before you glue everything down, I strongly recommend that we put these in place. Now, there's certain things that are being glued now finally, and another thing some guys asked me was about these longerons. And guys, I put them in as I go. I found it easier. I was going to glue them and put them in one piece. I just found it not to be a real good way to do it at that point, so I didn't do it that way. And the parts fit very tight, very nice and precise, and that's the way it is. And anyway, what I'm getting ready to do is level it, but I wanted to bring some attention back to these parts, because this is kind of one of those deals that's pretty intricate. And don't put any of this stuff together without the tubes to align it. And then after that, we can kind of ream them to fit everything. But these need to be done with an alignment. They do set in a certain way. And also, I'm really thinking that these should be epoxied in place. Once these are done, I will actually go and I will countersink another piece into this and actually have a screw probably somewhere on in here, which will go through it with a captive nut underneath there to actually secure the wing. And I haven't quite figured that all completely out yet, but there is a lot of gluing and a lot of parts that go into this part in here. Now, this back part of this empennage, with the exception of these pieces, which are not glued in yet, they're just clamped in there because I'm still fitting them. They're very tight fitting. They need to be trimmed a little bit. Now, the one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit about is that, now, this hole right here is actually for the wiring to come through and go through the wing here. The wires come through here and back to the servo motors. Now, guys, a lot of this is not glued down yet, but what I did do, there is a third longeron that comes across here. Now, as you can see, it is not glued in. It's just sitting there. And the parts fit that nice. I did glue the tracks down to this board. The board I had machined and actually had it planed, and then I treated it with primer so I could pop it loose again later and reuse the board on another project. Anyway, it's one of these deals where I built this part, the last 5 frames up to here, I built this off of it and then set it up to it. And maybe or maybe not, it wasn't a good idea, but it did work out for me and it lined up beautifully. So I'm not even considering it. She is completely glued down to the table and will be until it is sheeted down to this longeron. There's going to be a lot of sanding, there's going to be a lot of shaping and things like that now. And a lot of this is going to get thoroughly glued tonight and be pretty much where it needs to be. There are a lot of little tiny parts and pieces that you don't see in the PDF, but they do go in these areas. There's some round washers such as these. And these actually, guys, they go in here. They go in there. And that just equalizes the load of where it's got to be for the bolt, because it does go through there. And also, I recommend that it actually gets spaced. Two of these washers in that deal will actually work beautifully and keep this from flexing when you do tighten the bolts. And as you can see, they actually sit right in. That's just a pointer. And they would go on this. And then these would go, yeah, like that. And they do fit. Just make sure they're lined up, and they will fit in there. And it actually gives you another point. Now, the one thing is that I wanted to bring up here too, fellas, is that this piece, you can go ahead and laminate it. Make sure you do it on the tube. Leave this loose. It does have some play in it. And that's so that this can actually be a line through with the tube. It goes through in here and there. This is not glued on, it's just sitting on there by itself. And like I said, the kit is amazing. A lot of this is not glued, so this needs a little bit of trimming in some of these areas. These areas here are pretty good. And yeah, it's just this took a couple days to get to this point. Now we got several hours of clamping and gluing, a lot more of it than I thought. I mean, this airplane is huge. It takes a lot of time. It's very important that you go through and actually look everything completely over. And especially when you consider the fact you're going to have to do a little bit of sanding here and there to get these lines down before you sheet it. Some of this needs to be actually done and actually shaped. They left these a little bit longer so that they could actually be shaped without any issues. Now, I talked about sanding the joints. I don't sand these joints in here, but I've had to trim a couple because they're just a little bit tight on that side. And some of these smaller parts are very delicate and whatever. But for the most part, I don't sand the joints. But I will sand and shape all of this before I start actually sheeting. And I do that I do that to get this so that there's no gaps in the sheeting when you do it. And it's going to be 90% of the strength on this thing, so that's where it really needs to be. As far as tubes go, if you have bought these kits and you don't have the tubes, don't start building this until you do get them, because it will actually, there's no way you can fix it. I mean, everything is so close tolerance on everything. I mean, guys, you can't even hardly get a slip of paper in these joints. I mean, when they're done like this, like in here, they're tight. And so you still need a bunch of clamps. You still need a few things here and there. You're going to need at least 20 or 30 clamps before you even start doing it. No reason not to get them. They're cheap enough and they're whatever. Now, these will be formed with blocks into these crevices when I do these, and I'll sheet down to them, but then I'll actually go through and actually make these block. This one gets cut off, but I'm not cutting it off yet until this is actually sheeted down far enough to where I can actually separate it. Now, this long run has to be cut here. It also needs to be cut here. It's not a big deal. And also, the engine mount needs to be cut right up the middle as well. And the thing is, you want to do it, but the thing is that this is plenty for the turbine. Turbines don't vibrate, but I will actually put a little bit of added reinforcement in there just to make sure. It's just a peace of mind. And I'll do that with angled, hardwood blocks in there, just to make sure. And I don't think it'd ever come loose. But anyway, guys, this is where we're at. And so like I said, make sure that you put all the parts in that are there and fit them in dry. Make sure they all fit. It's like I said, certain things have been glued. I'm kind of working in areas where it's been done, because there's areas that need to be really close attention paid to, and make sure that you do not put in any of those parts on the tail or the wing until you have your wing tubes. If you don't, you're asking for it. I mean, seriously, everything lines up beautifully, but you need them for alignment purposes. If you don't, you're never going to get it apart without destroying the airplane to do it. And with the keels, the way they're set up in there and everything, I wouldn't even want to even fathom the idea of even trying to tear this thing apart. So, and yes, there is a lower keel. This thing also, guys, real quickly, you know, before I run out of time, it is extremely rigid. If you look at the parts, these aren't even glued, and they are actually lined up beautifully. And it's kind of neat to look through it. I mean, really. But anyways, guys, you'll see there's no slop in this build. And again, I'm building it in the basement, waiting for the new shop. And this is why I'm doing this, is so that anybody can say, well, if he can do it, I sure can do it. Because once it's built, storing it's no problem. You'll fit in the closet, no problem, even though it's a monster. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. We'll be back next time.